I want to say that it is, this moment is not just a session, it should etch in those of you listening in and to our country the importance of our national constitution. It is one book, apart from Bible, that must continue to bind and hold this diversity called Papua New Guinea together. Yeah. This diversity called Papua New Guinea must be anchored and forever anchored in this living document. I call Papua New Guinea a living document. The generation of leaders and Papua New Guineans at 15th of August 1975, they were standing on the threshold of history themselves. I will forever say they belong to the greatest ever generation of Papua New Guineans. No matter what innovation this generation or future generations does to our country, or what contribution, I would say the Somare generation, the 1975 generation, will remain forever as the greatest generation of our country. Lest we forget their toil. Whilst we lowered the Australian flag and never tore it down, whilst there was no bloodshed in our land for our independence, the work towards pushing independence was no easy work. There were huge resistance also in Canberra. There were huge resistance also locally. Some political parties were set up to fight for deferment of our independence. Without naming them, you're a student of history, lawyers are students of history also. And you read books, read into your own country's 50 years of history. Our independence was foresawn by few who dreamt us into independence. Said John Geises, said Marape, said Wallace. Of course, the greatest in great-grandson said Michael Thomas Somare himself, Sir Julius Chain, John Carpenter, Dr. or Father John Momis then, Peter Luce, and the rest goes on. 1964 was our first House of Assembly. 1968 was our second House of Assembly. Pangu Party battled for our country's union and independence, 13th June 1967. The march went on. It was 8 quick years from the birth of Pangu to independence at 1975. And for me, standing as the present leader of Pangu, I take my role seriously. Pangu is the mortification of the consciousness of our national union, a union of so much diversity into one sovereignty, one country, one people. And today we live on, framed by our constitution. It is a living document. It is one of the most inclusive nation-building documents ever found on planet Earth. Many constitutions birthed around that time as nations were getting themselves unbuckled from the circle of colonialism. Those constitutions have been torn and thrown into the rubbish bin. And new constitutions have emerged. Papua New Guinean children of today, my generation, and those of you coming after me, my children's generation, lest we forget, the relevance of our constitution is timeless. It is a masterpiece that must live on beyond the generation that lives to enjoy the blessing that is contained in our constitution. The Constitutional Planning Committee went to work quickly. In 1968, when the leadership then knew that independence must happen, the dialogue between Canberra and Guinea was moving at fast pace. The government then, self-government, established the Constitutional Planning Committee. I want to take my hats off to leaders like great-grandson Sir Michael himself. He's deputy chair of the Constitutional Planning Committee. Now Dr. John Momis, then Father John Momis, one of the sharpest minds that has ever existed in the formation and birth of our Constitution, and still today remains sharp. And his greatest contribution to our country, apart from Constitution, remains on the aspect of decentralization of power. Power away from Guinea to our people in the form of our provincial government systems that must settle government closest to the people in bringing all the culture and traditions into that part of our country and that provincial government, and in that structure, our unity is forever maintained. I want to say they did travel to other parts of the world, Africa more so. I had spent some time with the fathers of our constitution. For me personally, as a student of PNG politics, and a student of PNG history, I did spend some time with some of the fathers of our country. One of the constitutional planning committee members was Sir Matebe Yui, who happened to be a member for Tali Pori back then. I did spend some time, we would be talking about their travel to Africa and their travel elsewhere, just to get the right tempo, and a constructive constitution that embraces the diversity we have in our country. They walked great miles. They, in their own reading ability, most of them were not in depth in reading like you and me, but their inadequacy was filled by God with great depth of wisdom. They were able to embrace a constitution that is the living document we have today and gives life to all of us. And I want to say to all of you children listening today, as a constitutional monarchy, as a parliamentary democracy that is deeply embedded in democratic principles, respecting rule of law must be our duty now and forever into the future. This one law, there's no two law, this one law must be the template that governs how we live in our country going forward. Everything and anything in our country must originate from Constitution. The only time I will differ from the Constitution is when it differs from Bible. But however, this Constitution is well constructed that gives right to human freedom, human liberty, human choices. It is, for me, it's mind-boggling that the fathers of our country were able to have the wisdom to construct something that is timeless, a timeless peace gifted to every child of this country since 15th August 1975. Have you ever seen the sequence of it? 15th August 1975, 4 weeks later, 16th September 1975, dawned on the country when a flag was posted in the hills of Guinea for the very first time. Constitution is a precursor to our independence. The reason is simple. It is the frame of our nationhood. The Constitution frames the national emblem we have. The Constitution frames, Section 2 of the Constitution frames our sovereign borders we have today. The Constitution gives voice and meaning to why governments exist and what is their role. The Constitution separates executive government from the Parliament and from our judiciary. These structures are deeply embedded. It creates our constitutional offices. It creates a national public service. And of course, the very earliest first amendment to the Constitution was to create the provincial government system that gives meaning to our unity in diversity. And I want to ask all of you, without laboring on, it is our solemn duty and responsibility to protect this Constitution. Every child of Papua New Guinea, the greatest gift we can all give to our country at the 50th anniversary of our independence. It's not roads, bridges, it's not money, it's not any other thing except upholding our pledge to our national constitution. First thing and foremost, every child on 16 September this year, starting today in our Constitutional Day, deep in our innermost reserves, we must pledge to uphold our Constitution. There are few times when our Constitution was tested to the brink. Some politicians maybe thought they were superhuman beings, they were above the Constitution. In 2011, for instance, Arnold and myself were found wanting on the other side of the political spectrum, where the majority in Parliament thought they were higher than our Constitution. It does not work this way. Even if you have majority in Parliament, your conduct of that majority must be within constitutional provisions. It is the rule book, it is the mother of all rule books that governs how we live, how we play, how we go to work, how we conduct meetings and everything else in our country. This is the one rule book that governs and administers all of our functionality. From this rule book, every other subsidiary rule books emerge that keeps our country working as a sovereign nation. And so I want to ask all of you here today, as you have this dialogue. Dialogues are held on many fronts and many occasions, but this is no ordinary dialogue. I speak to you, my children who are coming after me, who are now in this faculty. As law women and law men, you must be the light bearer in our country that is growing dimmer in as far as respect to rule of law is concerned. Your utmost duty in our 50th and the generation that will take it on. Who would have thought, say, Anwar Ahmed sitting here, the president at 1975, UPNG president 1975, would emerge as our country's second Chief Justice and the head of our third arm of government, and now still, 50 years on, remain very strong, relevant, functioning, working, talking, advising. 50 years is someone's lifetime. I speak to you children who will be living for the next 50 years, and I wish you all prosperous life for the next 50. And as the chief servant of our country, I am doing my absolute best with my co-leaders, trying our best to find any and every solution to prosper our people's life. But I speak to you as the next generation who will be coming into the workforce. Wherever you are placed, first thing and foremost for you, apart from Bible, is defend our country's constitution. The constitution must be defended. Even if contemporary changes are to be made, our constitution took depth of consultation with our people for it to be constructed. The process to change our constitution is entrenched in the constitution itself. And if some members of our society feels that our constitution has been breached, the process to seek redress, the Section 18 and Section 19 reference is placed in our constitution, go to the better arm of government. Our independent judiciary and my government is now working to construct a judiciary that is relevant for our country. We've inserted an appeals court in between Supreme Court and National Court, separating them. We're increasing the retirement ages of judges so that we can have more competency maintained in our judiciary, and they still are reading law. And so if anyone feels that the constitution has been offended, you don't need to be protesting. You don't need to be burning cars. You don't need to be looting. You don't need to come and chase a sitting prime minister out of the parliament like we did in 1997. Civil society must always run to court and ask the court to deal with any matters the society feels has offended our constitution. That's civility. And as we stand at the threshold of our 50 years here going forward, all and every conversation finds anchor in our constitution. Anything that diverges away from our constitution, you have a reference point. Go to the court, seek court, and when a court issues an order, like it or not, respect that order and work within the order. That's law and order in our country. As we speak at the 50th, and to all of you who are students of law here, I want to ask all of you, the number one voice today as you leave this conference, and as you go through this session on the anniversary of our 50th of our Constitution, go out there as missionaries of the PNG Constitution. Sound it out to the country. Tell the country, all of us, maintain respect for our Constitution, live within the provisions of rights in our Constitution, and follow our Constitution. This is a just duty to not only those who labored to construct this country 50 years ago, but to those who will come after us. Our children, including you, must live within this one good living document I am proud to call my country's constitution. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. It is now my distinct privilege to allow you to go into your other sessions and learn much, student. An experienced speaker, like Sir Arnold is speaking out from the front, learn from them, because in them you find enriching words that will also fill you up to shepherd you into life. Everything said and done, please, I conclude. May the Constitution live on into the future. Protect it, keep it. So that is our one rule book that frames this country of Somare. God bless.